Before we begin, thank you very much to Oma Ender Prime, combining three things I really like in that name, for donating at my Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega, helping to keep the channel afloat and keep the content coming. I appreciate it very, very much, as well as anyone who does so. Thank you very much. I realize that in this push for content that I've been doing lately, I kind of neglected my Kamen Rider peeps, and how could I do that? Most of you watching this channel for Kamen Rider got into Kamen Rider because of the channel, so why am I, just kind of leaving you in the dust here? We gotta do some more Rider stuff on this channel. We gotta get some more stuff in, so we're going to do that right now with a good old-fashioned tier listing. And we're going to do things a little bit different. This is not my custom-made tier list. This is just one that was ready to go, count zero, over on the usual tier list website. And I remember that someone said it was hard to tell what I was talking about in the last one because I wasn't using visual representations of what we were doing. So instead of a S tier, I've made it next, which means if I plunk Kuuga up here, you can see who I'm talking about. So for this set, we're going to do the Heisei Rider TV shows. We'll probably do toy lines later on, but for now, we're going to talk TV shows because I'm actually at a point where I've seen enough that I feel confident in expressing an opinion on most everything here. So we begin where Heisei begins. We begin with Kuuga. We're just going to go in order. I'm not going to bother mixing these up. So, Kuuga is a very different beast. It has a lot of the old late era Showa Rider series vibes to it. It's much more serious. It's much more dramatic. Not as much levity. And it's a slower paced show because there's not a whole lot of rush to get toys posted. There's not a whole lot of alternate villains and all that. It's mostly just a small core cast and how Kuuga, basically an existence of Kuuga, changes the life in the city. What's fun about Kuuga is the fact that it's the only series where the power-ups aren't like there's no oh well, you just got a new gadget, you've unlocked a new power, that. No, the upgrades, him gaining new forms and abilities, seemingly come at random as his powers just naturally evolve, and it becomes scary when you can see how powerful he is as Rising Mighty, and then you realize, oh, he got stronger as Amazing Mighty, and you go, oh, he got stronger again as Ultimate. He hits differently than the rest of Heisei because he has different vibes to him. For now, I'm putting him in B because it is a solid show. It tells a good story. The only trick to that is it might be, for those who are used to the rest of the Heisei Riders, it might just be a little bit too slow paced and maybe a little bit too serious. I kind of like a little bit of balance in my Rider show. So that brings us to Agito, and I'm going to put it in next while we talk about it. But if you know me, there's nowhere else it could go. There's no suspense to this one. I love Agito. I love the mystery. The mystery in Agito is so good, and it's so good at playing itself out to the point where every time you feel like you've reached the next point and you've solved this mystery, there's more questions left. And it plays itself very well to not run out of those. It's very well paced in that. I do love the character work in here. Not just for the writer cast, but the secondary cast also puts in really strong performances. Hojo is still such a good minor antagonistic presence. It's a very, very strong series. And yeah, it throws in just enough humor to just kind of give me a few smiles here and there between just really cool action sequences. A, absolutely A. Cannot do anything else with Agito. Let's talk Ryuki. My opinions on Ryuki have always been divisive. They have always been controversial, maybe. I know a lot of people who love Ryuki. I am not one of those people, and I've had friends who will back me up on this. They, for whatever reason, the show doesn't hit them right either. It doesn't hit me right. I don't like Kamen Rider Hunger Games. I don't like, we've got, we basically have a main hero, and even the secondary writer is still kind of antagonistic to him. When the moment's right. I'm not big on that, and I'm honestly just not big on the design style of the series either, which kind of pulls me out as well. For whatever reason, like, this is the one show where it's just like, it does not grab me. Every time I sit down and try and watch more of it, I really don't have much desire to just keep watching. The show just does not grip me in any way, shape, or form. So, and keeping in mind, this is just a personal opinion, I'm putting him in D. I know there's Ryuki fans. I'm sorry, I'm not one of them. It's just not my kind of show. Faiz, I will admit, I don't have as much experience with. This one I still have yet to finish. I like what I see in Faiz, but again, it's not a show that's like dragging me along and like I really, really need to finish this series. Not to the point of Ryuki, but for the most part, I should, hang on, why am I doing this? I'm forgetting my own system now. For the most part, Faiz is fine, but it's not one of those shows that I remember well, and it's not one of those shows that I really have desire to go back and watch again or watch more of. It's just kind of, this is kind of middle of the road. This is where I would put a C rank. It's okay. The series is okay. It's just closer to what I like, but still not quite where I need to be. Blade. Now, this one was interesting. The first time I tried to watch Blade, I went through the first 10 episodes and I just could not care. I could not get behind the show whatsoever. I sat down more recently and just dedicated myself to actually just watching it and actually taking it in, and really enjoyed it a lot more on my second run through. I like Garen's side story and his and his tragedies that he goes through. I really like Chalice. Chalice plays a great character. Even Liangle has an interesting twist to him. I really do like the cast of writers in Blade, and I do like the overall story. I also like that it plays to the traditions of Kamen Rider in that the stronger forms are the ones that actually come with a pretty big downside. There's a risk to using the final forms, which does put me in a it does put me in a better mood. Like, this is cool. This is cool. Like, I like that story element. So he's not an A tier show for me, because again, it's not one where I'm like, I want to go back and watch that moment again. But I am very willing to put him at the top of the B for now. We'll see who else ends up there. Hibiki. This is another one. So, the origins of Hibiki was, it wasn't originally intended as a writer show. At least this was what my knowledge was. That it was originally concepted as a different series altogether and then adapted into Kamen Rider, which it kind of explains why it does things so differently. And thoughts and opinions on if the differences are good or bad are going to be all over the place. For me, I'm not a big fan of the differences. I kind of like the style that Kamen Rider goes for. Hibiki, for a lot, is a breath of fresh air because it does do things its own way. It's offbeat for a Kamen Rider series, and the design work in it is really, really cool. I do like the look of the Onis, Hibiki especially. But again, it's not a story that I really want to go back to at any point, and it's not one that I really think is that big for me. So, like, Hibiki, I think, is down C, below Faiz. I don't think he's going to go much higher than that. I don't think I'm going to bump anything below him right now, at least not in the C rank. I don't know. We're hitting this midpoint in Heisei where, like, between Ryuki and Hibiki, whatever they were going for, just, with the exception of Blade, just did not quite work for me. I might go back and try him again. It might be the same as Blade, where if I go back with a new, more mature viewpoint, or if I just give it a better chance, I might be more into it. But for now, yeah, that's where it is for me. Kabuto. TJOmega trivia for you. I accidentally downloaded an episode of this show one day. Didn't understand a lick of it because it was halfway through the series and thought, oh, this Kamen Rider thing's not going to be for me. Which means this is actually the very first series I ever saw. At least it was the very first experience I had with proper Kamen Rider. Going back and watching it from the ground up, much stronger opinion of it. Much better opinion of it. I really like Kabuto. I love the character work. Gatak is like such a cool character in himself. I love the determination he has. Whether he's like fighting worms with just a pistol or trying really hard to prove himself to a Zector and trying to live up to Tendo and trying to be his friend. And taking the entire series to finally get him to admit that they are friends. It is such a cool series, and I love the variety in the series between all the different riders and all their different gadgets, and yeah, it's a really cool series. And this is also where we start getting into like the Heisei's sillier aspects. We started getting into some like actual comedy moments in the show. As to where it goes, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to look at the list here. I'm trying to think, where do all of these characters go? Where do all these series go? For now, I'm going to put them at the top of B. But I might reshuffle these. Now, let's talk Den-O. This is the moneymaker. Everything Den-O sells, and they just keep putting out more Den-O because of it. Den-O for me was the series I recommend if you like a light-hearted Kamen Rider series. If you like a more jovial and comical series, Den-O is where it's at. I find there's some weakness to the main rider in that he's always just kind of this cowardly, timid, weak character, but there's also something admirable about a character like that still willingly goes into these situations in order to, protect the greater good. Zeronos is an interesting kind of angsty character himself, and the Imagines are just, a trip. And I think just what they do with the Imagines is gonna be what makes or breaks a show for you, because it does get goofy, silly a lot. Hana kind of throws a wrench into it. I don't, unfortunately, the original actress, couldn't stick with it. So they did some weird time travel malarkey to explain a different not a younger actress. It was a little girl, started playing the character. Weird solution, but it does kind of like taint the series a little bit. This one's definitely going in the B rank for me. It's not one of my favorites, but I do really like Den-O. And I like how many different places they went with it. It definitely handled time travel better than some series we're going to talk about here. Alright, Kiva. Now, when I tell people what was the first Rider series you ever saw, Kiva's the one I say because, yeah, that's the first one I ever watched. I was watching Super Sentai, and I started Tokusatsu with Deca Ranger, went on through every Super Sentai after that and loved it, hit Go Onger and thought, okay, I can watch Go Onger, but this is way too kiddie and cartoony. I need something a little bit more mature to cleanse my palate. And that's what Kiva ended up being, because the design work was so cool. I loved the classic horror monster motifs and all the gothic imagery. And yeah, just Kiva himself looked awesome. This is another series that has some oddities to it, aside from the fact that it's two storylines from two different time periods. Also, some weirdness. Some of it got rushed a little bit, like Tatsulot got rushed into the series because the main actor, the suit actor, could not handle the main suit for Kiva. It was too heavy. So they had to like rush him into the Emperor form, which was a much lighter suit. So, fun little trivia there for you. So there's some weirdness to this series. In hindsight, it's not the best Rider series. I think it's hard to follow a lot of the times. While I loved it when I first watched it, there's so many more series I like better since then. It's a hard series to recommend just because it's so tricky, you know. I'm putting it at the top of C. And remember, C is the middle ground. It's not, that's not a bad thing. It's not like a video game review where everyone thinks that if it's below, if it's below like a 7.5, obviously it sucks. No. C's the middle ground. It's right along the average. If I'm putting it at the top of C, it means I have more love for it than I do the rest in the C rank. Speaking of, here's another divisive one. We admit Kamen Rider Decade has its problems. Its shorter run meant a really weird storyline. Its handling of the Rider worlds was weird. It had a change of writers halfway through, so a lot of story elements got dropped. We don't know what Narataki was all about. We don't know what Kivaro was originally about. We don't know if there was ever a proper ending, or where Decade's from, or what happened to his memories. No explanations whatsoever. But I love this show. It's a very problematic show, but I admit I really, really like Decade. I love the concept. I love the designs. Tsukasa, I think, is an interesting main character. D-End. D-End is such a cool secondary. I really like D-End. And it was a fun anniversary series, seeing all these different Heisei riders back in various forms. We don't get gills because the suit was damaged at the time. Now, I have seen a stage show where the gill suit is back, and I'm so upset that Toei has never broken that out on camera since. What to do with you? I definitely think he's going in the B rank. Like, because of my love of the characters, I would put him higher on the list. But the story is just so messy. The story in Decade is so messy. Ugh, yeah, it's torn between like love of characters and love of story. Since I do enjoy it more than Kuuga, but I think the story and the characters are good in Blade 2, but the story is just much better in Blade. So that's where I'm putting Decade. I wish I could put him higher because he's one of my favorites, but I have to admit the show is very problematic. Double. This is the one that took off this is the one where like a lot of people jumped into Heisei Rider. Great time to jump in too. Great show. Absolutely great show. This is where, I was going to say this is where like the 2-episode format started, but that kind of started in Den-O. And then it kind of got cemented in. I think this is where it was like really obvious, where one episode, we're going to get the beginning of the mystery and the beginning of the fight, and then it's going to be the next episode where we really like finish things off. And it was a very rigid show because of that. Even in the final episodes, it was a 2-episode format for that particular story. It is a really good story. Shotaro and Philip, great characters. Akiko, great characters. The Sonozaki clan, like everyone in the show was so good at what they were doing. And it's just a cool show of just great design work, great story, great devices. This is our first gimmicky Kamen Rider, and the Gaim memories absolutely work. They absolutely work. I absolutely bought them as high-tech gadgets of power. So, for double, I think Agito's finally going to get some company here, putting him in the A rank, and probably going to get some more company real soon here. We move on to O's. This is my favorite one to recommend to newcomers. I love Kamen Rider O's. I think of all Rider series, This is the one where I think back to moments the most. Things that I want to go back and watch those episodes again just so I can see those moments happen and just enjoy it all over again. Moments between Eiji and Ankh, moments with the different greeds. I love the characters. I keep saying, of course, but of course I'm talking about shows. Of course I'm going to say I love the characters. But the Greed were fantastic villains. I love the motivation behind them. I love the concept behind them. That they're always greedy for more because a piece of them was destroyed. So they never quite feel complete. That's cool. That makes an interesting draw for a character. Love that. I love the mythology. There's great mythology to the show. And Eiji makes a really nice main rider. Again, and also suit design work, great. It helps that it's the same guy who did the designs on Agito. And I love the balance. I love how there's always this constant struggle between who's got all the medals, and it's never there's never any definitive. Eiji at no point in the series has access to all of his forms, which not only explains why some forms stop getting used, but also means that the villains are keeping pace with him. That is a really, really good way of balancing things. O's is absolutely an A tier for me. One of my favorites. Easily, no doubt. Fourze. Here's another one where I'm going to lose a few of you. Fourze has its elements. I do like some of the secondary cast. I do like some of the themes of the show. Fourze loses me on the overall story because I feel like being confined to the high school, everything feels very low stakes. Even when we get to the end of the series and it's all about I'm going to I'm gonna wipe out Japan, just to see if I can get attention from aliens. No, you haven't earned it. You haven't earned it because you spent this entire series just terrorizing a high school, and I don't feel like the world's in danger at any point because of the Zodiarts. I've taken issue in the past with Gentaro because he's a character who, even though he's the main character, he never changes, and it was implied that he went through changes because when we first saw him again, oh, your hair is weird. Why are you dressed like that? And but we never got an explanation. We never got an explanation why he dresses like a typical high school punk when he wants to befriend everybody. No, and I really wish they had done something with that. The saving grace of this series is Meteor. Meteor Ryusei plays such a good secondary writer in this show. And yeah, I really like his story beats. Really like his thing with Nozomi too. I shipped that. I shipped that hard. For me, I liked him more than Faiz and I'll say I liked him more than Faiz and Hibiki. It's a light-hearted writer series. It's just kind of jovial fun, but for me, it just doesn't work. I'm not a fan of the story. I'm not a fan of the pacing because the switches pretty much determined what the story of the episode was going to be, and it determined, and you could tell they were just rushing through because they had to get to number 40, at the right time to debut the final form. So it felt like the gimmick and the toys in this one forced the pacing of a series that already didn't have a strong storyline for me. That's where I am on Fourze. Wizard. Wizard is a weird one for me too because I remember really liking it as I watched it because it was a return to classic form for Rider. A red and black hero, elemental form changes, upgrades to those forms. He felt very Kuuga in that sense. And I love his final form. Infinity might be my favorite ultimate form any Rider's ever had. I lose Wizard in in like memory because I don't remember too many big things from it. I wasn't huge on Beast. I mean, he provides a different side of the series, but also he's just one of those secondaries that kind of got on my nerves a little bit. Um, I liked elements of it, and I liked I liked toward the end where we introduced the mages and the White Wizard. Those elements work for me. I'm not huge on just the overall because like I said, it doesn't really stick with me in any way. I'm hard pressed to remember story beats outside of Phoenix and Medusa. It's just not one of those that stuck to me. I enjoyed it while I saw it, but it's a hard one for my brain to like keep track of. I'm putting him at the top of C because I do think overall I like him. I like it better than Kiva. It's easier to follow, but I don't think I have a whole lot of pleasant feelings on Wizard. All right, so we're getting into some heavy hitters now. Well, we're getting into another heavy hitter, Gaim. I've literally talked hours about Gaim with people. I love this show. It's a show with a ton of writers, but unlike Ryuki, I felt like every one of them had a purpose and a point, and they weren't just monsters of the week. They weren't just threats to appear and disappear. All of the different writers in that show. I cannot imagine that show happening without all of them the way they were placed. It's a huge cast of characters, but everyone plays a part, and every part feels like a vital cog in the machine. I love how well balanced the cast is. The design work, okay, fruit, okay, but once you get beyond that, I do really like the designs. Kachadoki is just a awesome looking, super form. Love how powerful it looked. Loved, I got to really got to love Baron. Silly as he was, it was his swagger. Baron's swagger is what made the banana suit work. I could take him seriously, even though he's carrying around a banana weapon, because, Kaito just had that, X Factor charisma to him. And I love how it really did come down to Gaim and Baron, Kota, and I just used his name, and I just blanked on his name, even though I just said it. What is wrong with me tonight? Oh, I'm filming this late, by the way. That's probably my problem. I love how it came down to them. I love how it has arcs. I love how it wasn't afraid to go dark. There were dark elements to this series. And yeah, it's just, like I said, so well balanced and so well done. I can't even think of a section. I can't even think of a section. Like 01 I really liked, but but that Zaya arc drags that show. I can't think of anything like that with Gaim. I enjoyed it from beginning to end thoroughly. So, with that all said, it does not quite beat Agito, but it is one of my all-time favorites. I think it has to be an A, and it has to be that high. Drive. Drive's a slow start series. It's hard to stick with it at first, unless you really like the design motifs. I didn't really like. I liked the Roymute designs. I didn't like the rider designs in this, just because I felt like the tires were getting on my nerves. His forms helped, but I hated type formula. Trideron was a lot better because the tire was, much more subtle in that one. It didn't get in the way it does on some, like on Mach. And then Chase. Once we get into Chase and everything with his story, that just the writing level just goes so high once we get to Chase's stuff. And there are still elements in the story I really, really like. I really like the finale. I'm trying not to spoil, but the way they handled the final fight and the way they handled the final villain, I've not seen another writer series do it, and they did it based on what was right for the story. And I think that's a very important distinction. They did what was right for the story. So, and it's one of those shows that I mean, you either love or hate the main cast. I thought the main cast was charming. I thought they all had their own little quirks that made them interesting to follow. And none of them are like, none of them reached, let's put it this way. Here's another reason Wizard ended up in my C tier. None of them reached Shunpei levels. I hated freaking Shunpei. That's my barometer for how annoying a secondary character and writer can be. And no one in Drive reached that, even characters who kind of went for a similar vibe. So, on Drive, I'm a little torn. I want to put him in B, but overall, like, I think I have more fun with Decade. I think Decade is a more fun series for me than Drive was. Drive is one where I could take or leave. We gotta do this now. When I think of Ghost, I think of lost opportunity. I think of a show that had a lot of elements going for it that completely forgot what those elements were. I think of, I think of, and here's my memory of Ghost. I can't even remember their names, but we had a science girl and a spiritual guy. And you never reached any point where she accepted the supernatural and he accepted the scientific. You never got to that point where they saw eye to eye. They were friends, but they were never, they never crossed the Rubicon on that one. And usually in a show like this, that would be prime shipping material, but just no, oil and water. That's apparently what they were going for with them. So yeah, those characters felt like they went nowhere. They're there for necessity at best. Halfway through the series, they forgot that, Ghost has ghost abilities. He stops hovering around. He stops going through walls and all that. There's a lot of situations where going incorporeal really could have helped, and they didn't actually use it. 2/3 of the way through the series, Spectre ran so low on things to do, he literally spent the rest of the show beating himself up. And they used the worst V-Cinema movie to explain how that was a thing, and it was still very, very poorly explained. This is one where, again, a tertiary writer, in this case, Alan Necrom, was the saving grace of the show, but even him, kind of feels a little bit weak. Definitely feels weaker than Chase, let's put it that way. And just the story elements that don't make sense. All of these, all of these, special, ghosts that help him out, that become basically worthless by the, halfway through the show once he gets grateful for him. And, and they, literally have to they literally have to make episodes just to remind you that the ghost parkas are a thing. And, once he gets Mugen, you never see the other forms ever again. You never see the souls again. No. And the fact that you could make this wish, you can make the wish on these icons at any time. That was the whole thing. They did the Dragon Ball thing. You got all 15 icons, make a wish. They could have done that so many times. And, they did it twice. Yeah, Ghost is my most hated show, at least in the Heisei era, because I'll just point this out right now. Ghost, I made it through. I watched all of Ghost. I couldn't make it through Saber. That's where Saber is for me, just if you want to know. X-Aid. Video games, doctors. Video games, doctors. I wouldn't normally mesh these together based on they share viruses, but you know what? X-Aid really works. The character work in this show is so strong. You've got Kuroto Dan, the meme machine himself, just chewing scenery like it's bubblegum. and loving every moment of it. I loved so much of the cast in this one. Laser was such a cool character. Emu and Parado, their dynamic was so cool. I loved watching them together. Poppy is such a Poppy got on my nerves, but she so quickly endeared herself to me at the same time. So strong. The characters in this show are so strong. Probably just on character work, probably the strongest series in here. This is if this was a little bit more serious, I'd probably put it even higher on my list. But it is incredibly enjoyable series. And I love how clever the series is. Once we get to the end, they set up scenarios that's just like, oh, that actually makes sense. Why aren't you using your ultimate form in this situation? Oh, that makes sense. Really, really clever stuff in the writing of that show. Love X8. Absolutely love X8. And thinking back to it now, I kind of want to start watching it again. It ends up in the A tier. The listing, I think I like X8 better than I like Double. Double's fantastic, but X8 just... Oh, there's so much to X8 I really, really like. Build. This is another one that had some interesting concepts to it. I liked the different story. I like the solid story arcs. There's different arcs to the show that you can identify, and I think they work out really well. The world setting is interesting because it gives us a different vibe and flavor than most Heisei shows that just take place in Japan. For me, I really, really like Magma. I really like Cross. I really like Magma. It's one of my favorite secondary writers. I like the two identities of Build and watching them struggle it out. It weakens a little bit because the full bottle concept never makes sense. They explain it, but it never quite works for me. Why is a rabbit and a tank a best match, chemically? And then why do we get things like Spider Cooler? Why is that a best match? They never quite explain how that works. They explain why the full bottles are a thing, but they never explain why they work the way they work. So there's a disconnect there that throws it down a little bit for me. But Build is still a really strong show. Still a really fun show. So I'm thinking top of B, honestly. Yeah, it doesn't quite hit the A rank. Because there's some elements to it that throw me off a little bit. I'll also mention Grease, who we also saw in... I think the actor who portrayed Grease, I think he is very commendable that he did such a good job as Grease that I forgot, most of the time that I was watching, I forgot that he was in Kiva. And Otoya was such an over-the-top and just incredibly likable character. Just incredibly enjoyable to watch. But he's good enough as Grease that I totally forgot that. So props to him on that. Yeah, Build in the B. Build in B sounds right. Z.O. Z.O.'s another mixed bag for me. I never really liked the main writer. I never really got behind him. I didn't like Gates's deal, where he was always so antagonistic towards Z.O., but he was still helping him along the way, and he was still, one of the gang. He spent so long refusing to believe that Z.O., was actually his friend, that he actually liked who he was, and that, Oma Z.O. was not, not who he was going to be. I don't know. I felt like that just dragged. I felt like that dragged too much. I wasn't big on the Time Jackers. They never quite explained what they were, why why they were doing what they were doing. Why were they searching for a new king if one of them was just going to like take over and just try to dominate everything and be the new TJOmega? Like, why beat around the bush all that series if he was just going to make a power grab? It comes down to how the tribute episodes were handled. I don't like the tribute episodes where they went back to the past and mucked with the past writers, like in the middle of what they were doing, because that led to so many problems with getting old writers back. Especially like Fourze. It was like very obvious in Fourze. It was basically, well, we'll take whatever we take whatever one we can get in the whatever actor we can get from the show in the modern day, and we'll write around it. And then maybe sometimes we'll get the main writer back and we'll do something real. And and then like the time variations where like they're like slightly different. I wasn't a fan of that because it like confused how things worked, and kind of like how canonical the Heisei shows were after Zio's meddling. And that kind of plays into a few of the other things that out of this, like Blade. The Blade tribute was fantastic, and I love that they gave Blade such a different ending. But I don't know if that's canonical now because time. I love the Agito episodes. The Agito episodes were beautiful. You could tell from the fact like Decade appeared as Agito first to like how loving the tribute in Agito, the Agito episodes were, that whoever is behind this series really liked their Agito, and I appreciate that immensely. It's a mixed bag show. It's a very mixed bag show. For me, yeah, I think I'm putting him right there in the middle of the C rank. So I'm looking over this. I'm trying to decide if I want to move anything around. I'm gonna move a couple things. I do think I like Blade more than I like Den-O. I think it's a stronger story than Den-O. I like Den-O as a lighthearted, like don't have to think about it kind of series. It's gonna get me in trouble, but like the more I think about it, the more I think Hibiki's too high. I really I'm really not a Hibiki fan. Really, I like the design work. I don't like the show. It's just not my preference, not my flavor of writer. I think I'm good at the rest. Kiva feels about right. Drive, I kind of wish I could bump higher, but I don't want to bump him above Decade. I have more fun with Decade, even though the story is terrible. And then Kuuga, bottom of B for Kuuga, because I like the mid ground of Heisei better. I like your Decade. My butter zone with Heisei is like that Decade double O's kind of period. I think I'm good here. I think this is where I'm going to leave this off. I am sure your favorite is way too low on this list, so let me know. Like I said, the best way to tell me that you disagree with me is to hit the like button and then hit the subscribe button and the bell to super disagree with me, and then I will really know how many people did not like my rankings here. But remember, it's all just personal opinion. Mine's going to be different than yours, so you respect mine, I'll respect yours, and we can both be mutually right and wrong together. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you the next time I decide to tier something. No idea when that will be or what it will be, but I'm working on it. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.